Hey everybody, we're going to be doing another Bible study in our continuing series, Things the Bible Says. That may shock you. And you are absolutely going to love this. I promise you. I was reading this and I said, I have got to do a video on this. It is absolutely epic. Now, we're going to be doing a video. I'm going to be reading something to you from the Bible. If you know anyone that's going through tough times, or if you yourself are going through tough times, and if you're not, all of us will be. It's like a cycle. It has been said that all of us are either entering into trouble, or we're in trouble, or we're just coming out of trouble. So life does have its trials. So you are absolutely going to love this video. I think you're going to get a lot out of it, and it's going to be very interesting and entertaining. I promise you that. Before we start, I want to give you a little update. ShotgunNow.net website right here has been updated. Go to our free stuff area for free software, free games, all types of goodies. Scroll down, get a complete audio Bible. Not a video Bible, it's an audio Bible. You could even put it on your MP3 player or play it through your car MP3 player also. You know how you can hook up your MP3 player to your car. Right here, free audio Bible. Now, this is going to be a long video, but it won't be boring. There will not be one part of it that's boring. So right before we get started, let me give you another 30 seconds. Here's some videos you can see. You go here, click video, and definitely want to see this one. Ray Comfort, the man, the legend. He defeated agnostic Matt Dillahunty in debate. Ray did awesome. You got to check that out. Over here, this is a video that's really hot right now. It's Obama's microphone was turned on and he's talking to a member of the Russian government, and you will not believe what he says. Now, this is just almost a miraculous video. It's one of those rare moments where Christopher Hitchens is praising Jesus Christ. I kid you not, he's being very respectful talking about Jesus Christ. A lot of atheists don't want you to see that, and it's hard to find on YouTube. We have it here, ladies and gentlemen, at shotgunnow.net. Now, are you ready for what I think is going to be one of my favorite videos that I've ever done? Here we go. Let's get started. This is awesome. There was a play that was going around Broadway, and it was Joseph, what was it, the Technicolor, in his Technicolor dream coat. And they got that idea from Joseph of the Bible. And the story's so much better than just about his coat. But there is some truth to that play that was going around, and he did have this multicolored coat, and a lot of people were jealous of it. So I want to read this story to you. It's fascinating. It's about a guy that really goes through a lot of tough things, and then at the very end you find out there's a reason for it. There will be comedy to this. There will be tears. There's lots of tears in this. There will be intrigue. There will be everything that is great that makes a movie great. They should make a movie about Joseph. I know they made a play, but the play doesn't do the real story justice. Now, this is not a fictional story. This is nonfiction. This is a historical event with a real person named Joseph and a real family in a real place called Egypt. All right, buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. We're going to start here. Go with me now to Genesis 37. And by the way, don't forget to get your free audio Bible here, and you can hear this again and again and again. Genesis 37. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children. So this man named Israel, and he has a child named Joseph. Notice, because Joseph was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic, here it is, of many colors. So this dad loves this son so much, and he makes him this very special tunic of all these different colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So you get this, right? Any of you guys that have brothers, brothers can really be brutal sometimes as they tease the younger brothers and whatnot. Now, this is not good. If your brothers are hating you, you do not want to share certain things with them. So listen what happens to Joseph. Now, Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. Why? What was this dream about? But this dream is so amazing that Joseph has to tell someone. It's so real. He says to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright." Picture this as he's talking to his brothers who can't stand him, right? "And indeed," look what Joseph says, "your sheaf stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." Not a good idea to say that to your brothers that hate your guts. So Joseph has this dream that all his brothers' sheaves are bowing down to his sheaf. And his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us?" Like, who do you think you are? Like, this guy, Joseph, they're thinking like he's just full of himself. "Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and his words. But these dreams, ladies and gentlemen, do not stop. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers. He's got to tell someone, right? He can't keep it inside, and he says, "Look, I have dreamed another dream." And listen what he says. The brothers must be thinking, this guy's full of himself. He says, "And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." You do not want to tell your brothers this dream when they hate you. So he even tells his father and his brothers, he just can't keep it in, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed?" Like, it's disrespectful. "Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to earth before you?" And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So you get this, right? He's having these dreams. Is this a dream from God? Do you guys believe that God can send dreams? I believe that. Check this out. Let's continue. "Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem." Now, I'm going to cut to the chase here because I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, so I'm going to shorten some of the things down. Basically, their brothers are taking care of the flock, and Joseph is looking for his brothers. Notice he finds a man there and he says, "I'm seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." So the man tells Joseph where they are. Now, picture this. Here comes Joseph walking towards his brothers. He finds them. They're probably out there talking about him and how much they hate him. And look what happens. Now, when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams." So notice they're even mocking him in his dreams, but this is getting serious now. It's gotten to this fever pitch here where they're now thinking of murder. But Reuben heard it. Reuben seems to be a pretty good guy here. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, "Let us not kill him." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father." So he's like, "No, don't kill him. You can put him in this pit, but don't kill him." And so Reuben's plan is to bring him back to his father, but it takes a turn for a worse here. "So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic." They do not like that tunic of many colors, jealousy. "Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal." So picture this. They look, and here comes some Ishmaelites, and they're going to Egypt. And they have all these camels, like this caravan coming along, and they have spices, balm, and myrrh, and they're on their way to Egypt. So the brothers think, well, wait a minute. There's no profit in just killing him or whatever. Let's make some money off of it. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pull Joseph up, lift him out of the pit, and they sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. So they take Joseph to Egypt. So picture this. Now you come out of this pit, now you're being taken to Egypt. So Reuben, remember the guy that was trying to save his life, he comes back to the pit and Joseph's gone. So what they did, they lied to Reuben and they took Joseph's tunic, they killed a kid of the goats and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colors and they brought it to their father and said, hey, look, we have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not? They're trying to trick the dad and thinking Joseph's dead. And he said, it is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, for he said, for I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Now, let's get back to Joseph. The Midianites sell Joseph to Potiphar, and Potiphar is an officer of the Pharaoh and captain of the guard. All right, now let's go to Genesis 39. This is where it gets really good. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, who was a man, he's an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him. He buys Joseph here from the Ishmaelites. And notice the Lord was with Joseph. Now I know you might be thinking, what do you mean he was with Joseph? His brothers tried to kill him, he's sold into slavery. But check this out. This is what I'm talking about when things are going bad for you, or you're having illness or whatever, you're going through tough times. Notice, I believe that everything is in God's divine providence. And as you mature as a Christian, you start to realize this more and more and more as you have trial after trial, and you start to realize, wait a minute, God exists, everything is working towards success. And that's one thing I want to talk to you about. Sometimes we look at the world and we see that it's getting worse and worse, and we might have this mentality that things are not going towards success. No, everything is going towards success. Everything is going towards God's will. Even though you have these episodes here like what Joseph is going through, everything is moving towards success. God's will is being done. And in the end, God's perfect will be done, and everything will fall together like pieces of a puzzle. So everything's in God's divine providence. If you're going through some tough times, just remember that. Let's look at what Joseph's going through. Check this out. So Joseph finds favor in Potiphar's sight, and he served him. So Joseph's like, hey, if I'm going to be this slave, I might as well be a good servant, And he even makes Joseph overseer of his house. And look at this. And all that he had, he put under his authority. So it was from the time he had made him overseer of his house that the Lord, interesting, blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Interesting. Do you remember that happened the same thing with the Ark of the Covenant? It was staying at a man's house, and the man started being blessed. And here you have something similar happening. The Egyptian's house is being blessed because of Joseph being there. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field, so he's prospering. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. So Joseph's basically in total control of all this guy's finances, everything, the household. He's running everything, and he has total control of everything. That's how much that he trusts him. Now check this out here. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife, Potiphar's wife, cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But Joseph refused and said to the wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Now, you can read the rest here, read Genesis 39, and basically she's like stalking him literally day after day, night after night. And so here Joseph is in a pickle here. He doesn't know how long he can last. He keeps rejecting her advances, and finally it takes another turn for the worst. Check this out. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house, and I'm skipping a lot of times, or she keeps trying to get Joseph, right? That he did not heed her, to lie with her, to be with her. But it happened about this time, Joseph went in the house, he did his work, and none of the men of the house was inside. That she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And now she's turning violent here. But he left his garment in her hand. He like takes off, and she's still holding his garment, and he ran outside. So now she acts really weird here. It's like she's ticked off or something. Like she's like psycho. Check this out. She goes psycho here. It says, "And so it was when she saw that she had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." I mean, what a blatant liar this woman is. And then she says, and when she cried out, that's when he ran. What a liar. So here Joseph's doing the right thing, and now watch what happens to him. So he kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with the words like these, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside." She's just like a liar. So now Potiphar gets ticked off at Joseph. Poor Joseph. First he has these dreams. His brothers hate him. His father, thinks he's disrespectful and rebukes him. They throw him in a pit. They sell him into slavery. And now this. Now watch what Joseph goes through. That his anger was aroused. So now Joseph's boss is ticked. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into prison. So now you're thrown into prison. And he puts him in this prison because remember, Potiphar was one of Pharaoh's captains. Like he worked with the Pharaoh. So notice it says the king's prisoners were confined there. So evidently Potiphar has access to where the king's prisoners are confined. He just throws them in there. So here's Joseph in prison now for doing the right thing. Okay. And here's that phrase again. But the Lord was with Joseph. Now you notice Joseph's going through all these things, but throughout that scripture saying, but the Lord was with Joseph. Remember, God's divine providence. He's working something out here. And showed him mercy. And he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So now the prison guards, respecting Joseph, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. So Joseph's even managing everything there. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority. Here it is, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Now, let us go to Genesis 40. Now, you remember Joseph's dreams? Look what happens here. The prisoners have dreams. This is getting interesting. Now the prisoners are having dreams. And we all know Joseph's into these dreams, right? You could even hear the excitement. Let me go through this. You'll see what I mean. Watch this. It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, so the Pharaoh's butler, personal butler and baker, are offended by the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, coincidentally, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them. And it strikes me that these aren't just little dreams, where like if you eat a piece of pizza or Mexican food, you might have a bad dream. These are different. And notice it says each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. It's like a structured dream. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of his Lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they answer him, and Joseph's like, "Oh, I got to hear this. What?" And they said to him, "We each have had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it." It's like driving them crazy. Like, what is this dream about? It's very interesting how Joseph responds to that. Joseph, remember what his brothers called him? The dreamer. So this is Joseph's specialty here. So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please." He wants to hear the dream. Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it had budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Now, immediately Joseph knows what it is. He's got this. He's got this gift. Look what Joseph says. This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner. Like, in other words, the way it used to be when you were his butler. And look what Joseph says, "But remember me when it is well with you." He wants to get out of this prison, right? "And please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For indeed, I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing where that they should put me into the dungeon." This guy's innocent. Now, remember the chief baker had a dream, and when he saw that the interpretation was good, like Joseph knows his stuff, he said to Joseph, "Well, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." And then Joseph said, because he wanted to know the interpretation of the dream, and Joseph said, "Hey, did you see that Bears game last night?" And then Joseph said, "Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?" And then, of course, the baker's like, "Why aren't you telling me the dream?" And then Joseph's like, "Don't you think it's great weather we're having?" "No, I'm just kidding." So here's the interpretation. The baker's thinking he's going to have a good dream, right? Like it's a good report. So Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation of your dream. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree. and the birds will eat your flesh from you. And then Joseph said, "Thank you, come again. Thank you, come again." So this is not a good interpretation. This is not good news. I should say the interpretation's good, but it's not good news. Well, let's see what happens. Now it came to pass on the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. So far, Joseph's batting 1,000. That's true. Let's see what happens to chief baker, shall we? But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Now, after all that Joseph does, he gets sold into slavery, they throw him in the pit, he gets, kicked out of his master's house, the master's wife's a psycho. Now he does this. What does the chief butler do? Look, yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. I'm telling you, Joseph is one remarkable individual. You have got to be focused on God's divine providence if you're going through something that he's going through. So Joseph's still in prison. But now look what happens. Look who's dreaming now. Pharaoh's dreams. I think you guys know where this is going. It's all starting to make sense. Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine looking and fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time, and suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. Now, it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. I know you guys know where this is going. Then the chief butler, oh, yes, you remember that now? It's so nice of you to remember, chief butler. He's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. What a jerk. But at least, he's slow, but at least he's faithful. So the chief butler, the jerk that forgets his promises, he says, oh, I remember my faults this day. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, we each had a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream, and it did come to pass, just as he interpreted for us. So it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. So Pharaoh sends and calls Joseph, and they bring him quickly out of the dungeon. They shave him, they change his clothing because, he's going to go in front of the king here. And he comes to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says to Joseph, so this is just absolutely amazing. Now he's standing in front of the king of Egypt here. And Pharaoh says to Joseph, I've had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, okay, here's the dream. In my dream, I stood on the bank of the river, And then I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but the 7 cows, and then the other cows eat the cows and the grain and all that, okay? So you get the idea. And he says, so I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Now, Joseph immediately knows it. He's got this gift, him being a dreamer himself. Watch what happens. Immediately he says, he doesn't say, I need about 5 days to figure this out. It says, then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Notice what God's about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be, notice, very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Joseph knows his stuff. But look what else Joseph says. Remember how everything Joseph's doing is prospering, and when he was in Potiphar's house, Potiphar was being blessed, and everything was prospering in Potiphar's house. Watch this. Now therefore, Joseph says, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. In other words, he's going to say, in the plentiful years, let's save up everything for the famine that surely God will bring. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. Now, you can already see the next verse, can you? Joseph's rise to power. Pharaoh's pretty smart also. Look at this. So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. They're like, yeah, we don't want to starve, The servants are all happy. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Pharaoh gets it. He realizes Joseph's got the power of God on his side. So look what Pharaoh says to Joseph. Smart guy, the Pharaoh here. Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Now, this is just epic. He's rebuked. Remember, Joseph's rebuked by his dad because he's telling the dreams. He's rebuked by his brothers. His brothers try to kill him. Then they send him into slavery. Then Potiphar's wife turns psycho. Potiphar throws him into the prison. And now here he is, rising to power. God's divine providence. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee. Sounds sort of familiar. Very similar to Joseph's dream. So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh Pharaoh called Joseph's name, I don't know what that is, Zaphnath Panah or whatever, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of that other person. Um, and you could read all those names yourself. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And guys, this story is just getting started. The best is yet to come. Check this out. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, in the 7 plentiful years, so Joseph's already been there like 7 years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So Joseph, and I'm going to skip a lot of stuff and just kind of summarize it. He basically stores up everything. And he stores up as much as he can because he knows that this famine's coming. Now, notice here, he said Joseph has 2 sons, and notice Joseph glorifies God in the naming of his sons. He calls his firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Now that is beautiful. Now, then the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Egypt ended, and here comes the sickly cows, the thin grain, here comes the famine. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. And I bet the Pharaoh was like, man, did I make a good decision with this Joseph guy? The famine was in all lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, do. Now Joseph is a brilliant businessman. Check this out. Joseph opens all the storehouses and he starts selling to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt, so all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain. And I bet the Pharaoh is like, we're in the money. You know, he's like, man, this Joseph guy was a brilliant businessman. This is like, buy low, sell high, typical economics 101 here. So all countries came to Joseph in Egypt. Notice, all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe in all lands. All right, let us go to Genesis 42. Oh, look who's suffering in the famine. This is getting good. I promised you guys it would. Look who needs to go to Egypt. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look at one another? They're all sitting around starving. They don't know what to do. And he said, indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And look at this. You are going to get chills. Look what happens. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers. It's been so long, they don't even recognize Joseph. I don't know how Joseph was dressed, and 7 years, and Joseph now has a wife and 2 kids and stuff, and he's probably been eating real good there in Egypt, so who knows how Joseph looks. But look what happens. Joseph sees his brothers and he recognizes them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, where did you come from? Where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. And he said to them, so he starts kind of toying with them a bit here. He says, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men." And in parentheses, I should put, except that time we tried to throw you in the pit and murder you. But, we're going to skip that here. So they're trying to sell Joseph that they're honest men. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." And one is no more. You know who they're referring to there. They're referring to Joseph, the guy they're talking to right now. But Joseph said to them, "You guys are spies. It's just like what I'm saying. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not leave this place unless your younger brother comes here." So it appears here that, and I could be wrong, I'm just kind of giving you my opinion, like Joseph really wants to see his youngest brother. And he says, "Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." So he puts them all in prison for 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses." So he's going to keep one of the brothers there in prison. All the other brothers are going to go, excuse me, and they're going to bring the grain. But watch what this kind gesture that Joseph does here. Watch. "You bring your younger brother, so your words will be verified, you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul." This is really sad. "When he pleaded with us, and we would not hear." So evidently when Joseph was being sold into slavery, Joseph was begging and pleading with the brothers, but they would not listen. So now they believe that they're being punished for the sins of what they've done. Notice they said, "Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them saying, "Did I not speak to you?" In other words, I told you so. That's basically what he's saying. I told you we shouldn't do this. "Do not sin against the boy," but you would not listen. "Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us." He's like, God's punishing us for this. This is, our sins are coming back to haunt us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them. Look, this is really touching here. And wept. So Joseph's taking, imagine you haven't seen your brothers all this time, and he's hearing their conversation. It finally hits Joseph like a ton of bricks, like a punch in the stomach. He's overwhelmed by this, and he starts crying. So he returned to them again and talked with them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. So he took one of the brothers. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain. Notice, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. So he still loves them. He's giving them all this grain and he's sending them back. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. So one of the guys opens up the sack and they see all the money there and they start freaking out. But as one of them opened up his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, "My money has been restored, and there it is in my sack." And they're freaking out. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" What prophetic words. What is this that God has done to us? Indeed. Then they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, The man who was Lord of the land spoke roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, No, we're honest men, we're not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our fathers. One is no more, I should say, talking about Joseph's death. They think he's dead, or sold into slavery, whatever. And the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the lord of the country, said to us, By this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here, take food for the famine of your household, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. Then it happened as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more, because remember they had to leave him back with Joseph in the prison. And you want to take Benjamin? All these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. He's basically saying, look, trust me, I can take your son, and I'll take good care of him. I'll bring him back to you, don't worry. But he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead. Speaking of Joseph again. And he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with the sorrow to the grave. And here it is, Genesis 43. Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt. So they still haven't gone back to Joseph, right? The father says, Go back, buy us a little food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, Well, the man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Joseph wants them to bring their younger brother. And Israel said, Why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you still had another brother? Like, in other words, why did you even mention this other brother? But they said, The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, Is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, Bring your brother down? Then Judah said to Israel his father, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. So he's basically saying all this talking about it, if we could have already been there and returned a second time. Let's quit talking. Let's just get done with it, right? And their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand. So they want to give back the money that was given back to them, plus more money. And take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also. They're going to take him and go back to the man. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So they're freaking out over there, the father here. So the brothers are going back. They took the present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. So here it is. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, Take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now, the men, his brothers, were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "It's because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us to take us as slaves with our donkeys." So this part's kind of funny. When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked to him at the door, and they're basically, look, what they're basically saying, I'm going to kind of paraphrase all this. Look, we didn't know about the money. We don't know how the money got there and everything. And they're freaking out about the money, right? "Oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened that when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, there was everyone's money. So we have brought it back on our hand, and we have brought down other money to buy food. They're like, we swear, we don't know how we put our money in our sacks and who did it." But he said, "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they would eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and look at this, and bowed down before him to the earth. And this is really going to get to Joseph. Remember the dreams he had, and now they're bowing down to him and everything he went through. He's realizing the power of God's divine providence. So Joseph asked them about their well-being, like, "How have you guys been? And also, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" And they answered, "Your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. Now, Joseph can't take it. He just starts crying. Check this out. Then Joseph lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Now, look what happens. His heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph starts to weep, and he's going to cry right in front of him. He just can't take it in. The love that he has and everything he's been through, everything's rushing in. And look, so Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. And he went into his chamber and wept there. So then after he weeps, he washes his face and he comes out and he's restraining himself, trying not to cry. And he said, "Serve the bread." So they set him a place by himself and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. Then he took servings to them from before him. But Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So he's really piling the food on Benjamin's plate. So or if they had plates back then, whatever. So they drank and were merry with him. Now, Joseph has a little fun with them here. And he commanded the steward of the house, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack." So he put the money back in again, just like last time when they were freaking out. "Also put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money." So he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away. So the brothers are leaving again, they and their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, "Get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, and which he indeed practices divination? You have done evil in so doing.'" So he overtook them, and he spoke to them these same words, and they said to him, "Why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servant should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouth of the sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from the Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we will also will be my Lord's slaves." And he said, "Now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless." Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched. He began with the oldest and left off with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there. And they fell before him on the ground, and Joseph said to them, "What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination?" Then Judah said, "What shall we say to my lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found." But he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, go up in peace to your father." Now remember, the father was freaking out because he was like, I can't take it if my child doesn't come back, right? And look what happens. Judah came near to Joseph and said, "Look, my lord, please let your servant speak a word in my lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh. My lord asked his servant, saying, 'Have you a father or a brother?' And we said to my lord, 'We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of the mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more.' So it was when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my lord. And our father said, Go back and buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down if our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn to pieces," notice referring to Joseph there, "and I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father," he's basically telling Joseph, look, you can't send us back without his son, because he's going to die. He'll just die. It's because he already lost Joseph, so he thinks, and now he's going to lose this son. So we go back to our father, and the lad is not with us. Since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. He just will be able to take it. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father?" Now, at this point, Joseph just loses it. He just starts crying. He doesn't care who sees or whatever. He just he lets the cat out of the bag, and this is beautiful. Check this out. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me," because he's about to like cry, right? So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He's going to tell them that it's him. And he wept aloud. So all the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh, on the other side of the walls and everything, they're hearing Joseph crying. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But their brothers are like freaked out. They're like, "What the heck is going on?" They don't get it. They just can't fathom that this is Joseph. His brothers could not even answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Here's this guy with all this power, and they just can't grasp it. It's too much. They're like, "What the heck's going on?" And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Think about it. If all that didn't happen, their very lives were on the line. They could have all died through this famine. Now, Joseph goes on to say, "So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here.' Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him." Now, what's awesome is Pharaoh hears about it. And look at this. He's like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Joseph's brothers have come." So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart, go to the land of Canaan, bring your father and your households, and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you're commanded, do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also, do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." Then the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments. But to Benjamin He gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and he said to them, "See that you do not become troubled along the way." Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, "Joseph is still alive, and he's governor over all the land of Egypt." And Jacob's heart stood still, because he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, "It is enough. Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night, and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." So he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes." God bless you guys. This is Shock. I love you. Don't forget to continue reading Genesis 46. And most of all, keep dreaming. Dreams come true. Have a great week.